Trunks the Story, A Lone Warrior, premiered in Weekly Shonen Jump on August 11th, 1992, just as Trunks begins fighting Cell in the manga, and right after number 16 begins fighting Cell in the anime. I always say Dragon Ball contains 520 chapters, but as a lot of people know, Dragon Ball's final chapter is 519. Well, that's because this exists. It's a part of the series, but it's the only chapter that's unnumbered, the only installment that is not a part of the ongoing serialization, but instead breaks away to focus on another place and another time. Trunks' story is a completely unique entity in the history of the Dragon Ball manga. As such, no one seems to know what to do with it. It premiered alongside chapter 386, but it's never placed there. The original Tankobon collection includes it in the same volume in which that chapter appeared, 33, but slots it in at the end. And to keep from breaking the pace, I can understand the logic in that. The premium Kanzenban release must have really been worried about breaking the pace then, because they pushed it all the way to the end of the series. That's right, after Goku flies away with Oob, Trunks' story. Because it's oh so relevant there. In it, an adult Gohan and a young teenage Trunks spar with each other and then tell themselves exposition they already know, such as there being no Senzu to regrow Gohan's lost arm. But it just so happens the city they're right next to is being attacked by the artificial humans, number 17 and number 18. Believing that Trunks is the hope of the future, Gohan prevents him from participating by knocking him out. When Trunks comes to, Gohan is dead. 3 years later, Bluma is finishing up her time machine, but when Trunks hears of another artificial human attack, he flies off to confront them, believing they don't need help from people from the past. When he wakes up from his severe beating several days later, he agrees that he should probably travel through time. And so he does. The end. When I covered the Bardock special, I bucked my usual trend of covering material in release order by skipping ahead to Bardock's two other major stories, Episode of Bardock and Dragon Ball Minus. I felt it would help illustrate the differences in their approaches to storytelling by holding them up side by side rather than years apart. But Dragon Ball Minus also had the unintended side effect of forcing me to reevaluate Trunks the Story, which I briefly brought up in that video. Dragon Ball Minus and Trunks the Story have many similarities. They are both standalone Dragon Ball chapters. They both focus on a character other than Goku. They are both prequels. Time travel makes relative chronology kind of difficult, but while it takes place in the future, it is technically a prequel. And neither one actually tells a story, despite Trunks the Story being so brazen to place the word story in its name. Like Dragon Ball Minus, it provides a bunch of bullet points of the life of Trunks without much else. There are a few details we get here that the actual series didn't tell us, such as Gohan missing his arm and Trunks originally being reluctant to use the time machine. But for the most part, this chapter is stuff we already know. Number 17 and number 18 run amok, Gohan trains Trunks until he's killed by them, Bluma builds a time machine, Trunks goes back in time. It's exposition but drawn onto a page rather than spoken. I find it especially funny how rushed it is in regards to the fighting. As in, we don't see any of it. In the case of Gohan's last stand, I'd argue that actually works. This is Trunks' story after all, and he doesn't witness any of this. I'd say it's more impactful understanding what happens without seeing it, simply ending on the eerie panel of number 18 smirking as if she knows how this will end. And I'll give credit where it's due. Toriyama does a great job with the layout and direction of Trunks finding out what happened to Gohan. It's simple and silent and almost distanced from us. It's Trunks' moment, and we're giving him space to grieve. However, the other fighting cutaway is when Trunks goes after the artificial humans 3 years later, and that doesn't work at all. In fact, it comes off as almost comedic. I'm going to avenge everyone! Doodly doodly doodly. Well, that didn't work. Like its spiritual successor 21 years later, Trunks the Story seems to be attempting to cram far too many ideas into far too short a space. But where Trunks the Story has the advantage is that it doesn't defecate all over Dragon Ball's themes. It's relatively inoffensive, so I can't get mad at it, or really feel anything because of it. It just kind of exists. Its handling of Gohan's death is done well, but everything else coasts. Because of that, I'm once again breaking my own rule here. There is simply not enough content in this chapter to fill an entire video, so I've decided to also include its animated adaptation here, despite the fact that it didn't come out for another 6 months. Defiance in the Face of Despair, the remaining Super Warriors Gohan and Trunks, premiered on February 24th, 1993, right as Cell decides to blow himself up in the manga, and following episode 175 of the TV series, in which Goku and the others arrive for the Cell games. So yeah, we're jumping quite a ways ahead from where we currently are. This serves as the second Dragon Ball Z television special. Or at least the second one that matters. The previous summer there was another television special that was just Goku and Gohan showing clips from Dragon Ball movies in order to promote the upcoming film, Extreme Battle of the Three Great Super Saiyans. Clearly that steaming stinker needed all the promotion it could get, but this is the first one since Bardock that actually told a story. More recently, this television special makes me think of it as a photographic negative of the film adaptation of the Batman story, The Killing Joke. In both instances, the content it's adapting doesn't show up until the halfway point. What makes them different is that in The Killing Joke, what precedes that is material that is in no way related to anything in the actual story, accomplishes nothing but weigh it down, and, makes you cringe. But in the case of the Trunks special, the first half effortlessly shoulders the impressive responsibility of transforming Trunks the story into a story. It accomplishes this in two ways. It lets us live in this world to truly understand just how nightmarish it is for everybody left alive, and it gives Trunks a solid character arc, tied into his desire to become a Super Saiyan. Perhaps more than any character other than Goku, future Trunks is synonymous with Super Saiyan. That's how he's introduced, that's how he grabs our attention. Not only is he a mysterious stranger, not only can he kill Frieza with ease, but there is somebody besides Goku who can transform into this legendary warrior. I'd wager if there were two things fans wanted to know about Trunks' backstory, they were, where did Trunks get his sword, and how did Trunks become a Super Saiyan? Trunks' story tells us neither. When we first see him, he already is one, and it's never commented on. The Trunks special completely rewrites that. Trunks' story is a coming-of-age story. He begins as a boy who has grown up in this world, determined to make it better, but helpless to do anything about it. His father is gone, as are most of the people who could help him channel his potential. Upon teaming up with Gohan, he now has a father-type figure, a mentor, a friend, and a means to achieve his goal. But even through that tutelage, he can't reach the level his father did, can't tap into that rage and pain. And so, naturally, it's Gohan's death, the last act of that mentor, that finally unlocks this for Trunks. Toriyama's direction for this scene is good, as I said, but the special turns that from a moment of, oh yeah, we told you before that Gohan died, this is it, into a pivotal step in Trunks' development. He achieved what he wanted, but at what cost? But even that's not the end of his journey. 3 years later in Trunks the Story, Trunks for some reason thinks he's now able to handle the artificial humans. Here, that makes more sense. We see how far he's come from the beginning of the special. He's finally reached that fabled transformation that puts him on the same level as Goku and his father. And he's had 3 additional years of work on top of that. You could say that Trunks is genre savvy as to the hero's journey, but he mistakenly believes he's farther along than he is. He's Luke in The Empire Strikes Back, as opposed to Luke in Return of the Jedi. This is why I think Trunks the Story really dropped the ball by not showing Trunks confronting number 17 and number 18. As popular a moment as Trunks grieving over Gohan's body is, and as important as that is to his journey, I think this fight is even more essential. Trunks starts out as eager youth and progresses into cocky teen, but it's here that he becomes the man we're introduced to in the main series, the humble pragmatist who insists on taking the smart option over the exciting option, even if it means defying the father he's so idolized. Because he went down that road himself, and he paid the price, dearly. Upon reflection, I realized this is one of my favorite fights in the entire franchise. Even more so than Cell's introduction, this fight embodies terror, as Trunks realizes just how over his head he is. There's some amazing moments and shots, like Trunks hiding under the stairs, or number 18 catching him in a shard of broken mirror. It's funny that Toriyama, notorious for placing his action in grassy areas, sets up 2 fights in urban areas, and doesn't show either of them. I asked last week how it's interesting seeing people punch an invincible brick wall. Well, this is how. Because it's not about inflicting damage over and over again that's shrugged off until the moment the writer decides this one's for all the marbles. This is about Trunks facing down implacable foes as his self-assuredness and his body crumble. And no matter what he does, he simply cannot measure up. This is one of those rare instances in later Dragon Ball when I can really feel the desperation and the force of the blows. It's so heartbreakingly pathetic watching Trunks stagger around punching them in the face with no result, until his opponents finally decide they've amused themselves enough. The use of Movie 4's creepy organ music really punctuates just how sick a game is being played. As I said, the other way the new material enhances Trunks the Story is by letting us live in that world. Number 17 and number 18 barely appear in Trunks the Story, but they are frequently shown here, and it's enough to make me think Torishima Kazuhiko was quite mistaken in insisting they wouldn't make good villains. They are captivatingly twisted, and take such a huge amount of glee from the variety of sadistic torture they inflict on people to keep themselves entertained. Be it running people down in cars, taking out a military just to get into an amusement park, or shopping. Just like in the series, number 18 has to be given a clothes shopping scene because she's a girl, and girls aren't interested in anything else but shopping for clothes. Ooh, I want that. Ooh, I really want that. I could do without that. In short, this makes it quite easy to understand why Trunks has such a difficult time accepting our timeline's artificial humans as being anything but abhorrent monsters. Gohan works more as a plot device than a character, and that's not a complaint. Despite his name being in the title, Gohan is there primarily to serve a function in Trunks' life and development, an ideal to which Trunks aspires, and the story does a great job in using him that way. It is fascinating to see how dramatically different Gohan becomes in this reality. But overall, while a lot of people seem to laud this Gohan as an improvement over what our Gohan grew up to be, I'm overall ambivalent towards him. Honestly, he's such a different character it's hard for my brain to acknowledge him as Gohan. It is fun to see him in the Piccolo role though, and he is a surprisingly stern teacher. I don't know if this is a deliberate nod or not, but I find a scene where Gohan knocks Trunks in the water very similar to a scene in the Saiyan arc where Piccolo does the same to him. They even use the same piece of music in both instances. There are a few other character cameos, but rather than feeling like pointless fan service of the where are they now variety, these scenes feel like they embellish the overall tapestry being presented to us. The fact that the Muten Roshi and the others are still in hiding after all this time, and that Chi-Chi's become a broken person over the complete upheaval of her dreams of a perfect nuclear family, serve as that final capstone to understanding what these events have truly done to the world. A lot of the exposition in the opening of Trunks the Story is instead shown during the first half. We actually get to see Gohan losing his arm and running out of Senzu rather than being told about it. Bluma gets to compare Gohan's appearance to his father's rather than Gohan being told that secondhand by Trunks. A few alterations have to be made to accommodate these new scenes. In the original, when Gohan confronts number 17 for the final time, the latter comments it's been a year since they last met, which is obviously not the case in the adaptation. One I particularly like is a subtle change to Gohan and Trunks' argument. In the original, Gohan knocks Trunks out by pulling a "look over there" gag, which really doesn't fit the somber tone. In the adaptation, Gohan appears to acquiesce so Trunks will let down his guard. Then he knocks Trunks out. A small change, but works so much better. I think the only thing the manga does better is not showing Gohan's final fight. It's not a bad fight, but it's just not necessary, and I think the revelation is more powerful without it. And it's not as if we didn't already have a Gohan fighting the artificial human scene. I could almost go on forever about this special. There's so much to say, like how wonderfully atmospheric the lighting is, how Kusao Takeshi absolutely knocks it out of the park with his reaction to Gohan's death, how the end credits tie the pieces together by showing the clips we've already seen of what happens to Trunks after he makes that fateful trip in the time machine, up to the point that our number 17 and number 18 are activated. It's only a shame it can't really complete his story, since that hasn't been written yet. So I would sum up by saying that the Trunks special does its job of making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. It is an adaptation that surpasses the original in almost every way. And while that's probably the case, I suddenly find myself wondering if that's how their relationship should be described. Oh, the special is definitely the superior work, but accompanying every chapter in the original run was a small note by Toriyama. Attached to this one, he said, "A Dragon Ball Z TV special based on this week's Trunks one-shot is planned for broadcast within the year." That got me thinking. Toei had not only considered making an animated Trunks special by the time this came out, they had already confirmed it to the point that Toriyama could speak publicly about it before any of the general public had ever read the original work. I found that kind of surprising, and it made me wonder about the nature of both of these projects. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I'd always assumed that Toriyama released this chapter, and Toei liked it and decided to adapt it into the TV series. And it still could very well be that, especially given the wording of the translation. But it could suggest some sort of mutual collaboration. The fact of the matter is, modern Dragon Ball has forced me to consider these projects in a new way. After all, in the case of Dragon Ball Super, the manga version was originally intended to promote the animated series. So even though a lot of the chapters of the manga premiered to the public first, it could be argued that the TV series was the main original product. So what if it was the same here? After all, this kind of dark subject matter, a la the Bardock special, seems much more in Toei's wheelhouse than Toriyama's. So what if this was Toei's idea, and Toriyama drew his interpretation, with its tantalizing hint of an animated version attached to it to promote the TV special. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just throwing out an idea I had. And so Dragon Ball Dissection December once more comes to an end. Thank you very, very much for all of your support. I may not have the largest channel, but I have the best fans. It's always a pleasure to get to interact with you in the comments section. As I approach my 10th anniversary of creating reviews for this channel, I reflect more and more. Every time I take a step back to truly acknowledge that there are thousands and thousands of people who appreciate what I do and look forward to this time of year for this very reason. Well, it's very humbling and very touching. There aren't that many people who have the privilege to say that. I am truly fortunate to have you. As always, the past few months I've spent working on this batch of videos has left me in need of a vacation, so it will be a little while before I see you all again. But there will be new videos in the coming year, of all types, and the next time we meet again for Dragon Ball Dissection, it'll be with the Cell Arc Part 13. See you there!